Wait for it, just another second. There you go. If you drive your car onto the airport, you know exactly what I'm looking at in the rear view mirror. And you probably don't realize it, but waiting on airport gates costs the U.S. economy more than $7 billion in lost wages and productivity. Actually, I just made that up, but go ahead and prove me wrong if you can. Why do we do this? Well, let's take a little drive around my home airport, Venice, Florida, to see why. It really all started in a mud hut in Afghanistan, but this building had a little bit to do with it, or at least its predecessor. Used to house a flight school called Huffman Aviation, and they trained at least 2 of the hijackers well enough to fly airplanes into buildings. Those hijackers lived in the town where I live now. Now the building has been refurbished and it's one of the best FBOs in Florida. It has a really nice restaurant. Right after 9/11, we had police cars on the airport 24/7 for at least a year or two. It was all for optics, of course, because by then the immediate threat had receded, but the fear was just digging in. Well, so now it's 16 years later and we haven't gotten over the shock of 9/11, and I guess that's understandable. But there's this persistent, almost hysterical fear that small airplanes represent a compelling security risk. I don't know about you, but I personally refuse to believe that. Isolated acts of violence, no matter where they are, don't threaten the Republic. That's how terrorism works, and I'm just not going to play. You know, 9/11 really did change everything. You might not remember this, but in 1994, a Cessna 150 crashed into the side of the White House. After that happened, we didn't freak out and shut down general aviation. And 20 years before that, an Army private stole a Huey helicopter, buzzed the White House, and landed on the South Lawn, and we didn't shut down general aviation after that either. Let's circle back to the gate. The new administration says it wants to eliminate regulations. You know, I'm all for that. Let's start with one buried in the TSA regulations that require us to wait for the gate to close before we move on. And technically, if someone is behind you, you're supposed to block them and let the whole inane cycle start over again. Doesn't make any sense. None of this is to suggest that we don't need a fence or a gate. We do. It keeps casual vandals and animals off the airport. And when you think about it, I'm not sure there's a lot of difference. But what we don't need is TSA busting our chops if we don't wait for the gate to close. You probably noticed there's hardly anyone ever skulking around waiting to sneak through the gate. And President Trump, if you're looking for some other regulations to chop, I have another suggestion. These TFRs. This one is in effect over the east coast of Florida for 3 days. It affects 7 airports, no GA operations in that area. This one was just announced. 14 airports. This is on the West Coast, centered on the Tampa area. These are extremely disruptive of general aviation operations, and I think for questionable security benefits. Fortunately, this one's only going to last for a few hours. It's not that such a thing is outrageous or unnecessary. It is. You do need to have security precautions for presidents. I don't think anyone would argue the point. But the size of these TFRs is so large, it defies logic. So why do we continue to make them this large? I think it's bureaucratic inertia. We've always done it that way, so let's keep doing it that way, only more. Now, it may sound naive and unrealistic to complain about this in the hopes that it will change, but if no one ever does, it never will. So, President Trump, that's my heartfelt suggestion for reducing government regulations. How about it?